England broke from Rome in 1534. In 2021, its Catholic population hit 4.7 million and is still climbing. The 2021 census for England and Wales produced a result that surprised sociologists and church analysts equally. In a country where overall Christian identification dropped below 50% for the first time in recorded census history, where 37% of the population now identifies as having no religion at all, the Catholic Church recorded growth, not marginal growth, documented, measurable demographic growth in the most secular social environment Britain has produced in centuries. The Church of England, the state church, fell sharply. Weekly attendance dropped from approximately 1.1 million in 2000 to under 700,000 by 2019. The institution that Henry VIII constructed to replace Rome is contracting. The institution he broke from is expanding. This requires explanation. The instinct is to reach for a spiritual narrative, a nation rediscovering ancient faith, a cultural correction after decades of secularism. The actual data does not support that reading. What is happening in English Catholicism is structural, sociological, and driven by three distinct forces operating simultaneously. They do not share a common origin. They do not share a common demographic. They are converging inside the same institution and producing, collectively, a result that no single factor could have generated alone. Understanding what is actually happening inside English Catholic parishes requires setting aside the comfortable narrative of revival and looking directly at the mechanics. The first mechanic is the simplest. People moved. On May 1st, 2004, 10 nations joined the European Union. Freedom of movement activated immediately. Within 3 years, an estimated 600,000 to 1 million Polish nationals had relocated to the United Kingdom. Poland's Catholic identification sat at approximately 85 to 90%. What arrived in England was not merely a labor migration. It was a transplanted parish culture, one carrying Marian devotion, high mass attendance rates, and a relationship to the church shaped by decades of resistance to Soviet-era atheism. Polish Catholics had not inherited a casual faith. They had maintained one under active state suppression. They filled pews that had been empty for a generation. The Polish migration was the largest single wave, but not the only one. Filipino communities brought Catholic practice from a country that is 80% Catholic. Nigerian communities established some of the most energetically attended congregations in London's outer boroughs. Catholics from Kerala, India, descendants of communities claiming apostolic origin from Thomas the Apostle, added yet another liturgical tradition to the mix. Walk into a Catholic Mass in contemporary Birmingham or East London on a Sunday morning, and the congregation reflects this precisely. The priest may be Polish or Nigerian. The hymns may shift language between verses. The families in the pews represent 4 or 5 countries of origin, sitting inside a single English postcode. This is not the Catholicism England historically knew. It is something newer, louder, and considerably more alive. But while the Catholic parishes were being revived by outsiders, the native state religion outside their doors was tearing itself apart. The decline in Anglican attendance across the late 20th and early 21st centuries tracked a deeper institutional problem. The Church of England operates as a broad coalition required to hold together Anglo-Catholics, evangelicals, and liberal progressives under a single ecclesiastical roof. That coalition held, imperfectly, for decades. Then the modernization questions arrived with binding force. The ordination of women as priests began in 1994. The vote to consecrate women as bishops passed in November 2014. Both decisions were theologically necessary for one faction and categorically unacceptable for another. The conservative Anglo-Catholic wing found themselves on the losing side of institutional votes they could not reverse. For this constituency, the doctrinal distance between their position and Rome's had always been narrow. The Church of England's internal fractures did not create converts. They created a waiting population. Rome had been watching this develop for years. When the formal institutional response came, it came not as an open door, but as a precisely engineered structure, built to receive a specific kind of person. It was named after a village in Norfolk that England had tried to forget for 5 centuries. In 1061, a noble woman reported a vision of the Virgin Mary, instructing her to build a replica of the Holy House of Nazareth in the village of Walsingham. What followed was 5 centuries of continuous pilgrimage. Kings walked the final mile barefoot until Henry VIII dissolved the shrine in 1538 and had its statue of the Virgin burned. Naming the Vatican's new structure after the exact shrine Henry VIII destroyed was not accidental. It was a statement. The personal ordinariate of Our Lady of Walsingham was established on January 15, 2011, by Pope Benedict XVI. Its legal mechanism was precise and deliberate. Former Anglican clergy could enter Catholic communion, be ordained as Catholic priests, married men included, and continue celebrating an adapted form of Anglican liturgy within full Roman jurisdiction. This was not individual conversion. It was collective transfer. Former Anglican Bishop of Richborough became the first ordinary. Former chaplain to the Queen entered in the same initial wave. Approximately 1,000 clergy and laity crossed in the first movement. The numbers were not enormous, but the symbolic weight was massive. Senior figures of the established church, some who had served the crown directly, formally entering communion with Rome. They did not have to become Roman. They became Catholic while remaining, liturgically, recognizably themselves. The Vatican had successfully engineered a lifeboat for disillusioned Anglicans. But the final and most unpredictable force driving this Catholic growth didn't come from immigrants or old converts. It came from the youth. The youngest Catholics in England are frequently the most traditional. That inversion is not accidental. Pope Benedict XVI's 2007 document, Summorum Pontificum, liberalized access to the pre-1962 Latin Mass, celebrated entirely in Latin, priest facing the altar, congregation in silence. The conventional assumption was that this was a concession for elderly Catholics. The attendance data disrupted that assumption entirely. The communities that formed around the traditional Latin Mass skewed disproportionately young, university students and young professionals in their 20s who had no personal memory of the pre-Vatican II Church. What they had was a specific hunger that contemporary secular culture was not feeding. British society in the 21st century offers fluidity, choice, and the continuous dissolution of inherited structures. For a generation raised inside that environment, an institution that does not negotiate its terms, that presents ancient liturgy in a dead language, that maintains strict doctrinal positions regardless of their cultural popularity, functions as something genuinely countercultural. The strictness is not the obstacle. For this demographic, the strictness is the point. None of these three forces, immigration, Anglican fracture, traditional youth revival, were coordinated. No Vatican strategist designed their convergence. They arrived separately, from entirely different directions, and landed inside the same institution simultaneously. English Catholicism is not experiencing a spiritual awakening in the Romantic sense. It is experiencing a structural realignment, demographic, institutional, and generational forces moving in the same direction at the same moment. Henry VIII would find it deeply inconvenient.